Hello and welcome to RotD Review of the Day, and today I'm going to be taking a look at the 2018 movie Hereditary. I had heard a lot about this one, not in terms of any kind of spoilers or even plot points. I really had no idea what this movie was about, but I heard the hype, I heard the buzz, and I had to jump on it. So I did, and what do I think? I've honestly been churning over this all night. I actually recorded an entire review segment here about 5 minutes after I finished watching it, and I was very deeply affected by it. Let me just say that. Whether or not I liked it, I think that it caused me to have fairly incoherent thoughts as far as being able to objectively criticize or review the movie. And I wasn't, in retrospect, entirely satisfied with what I recorded, and it seemed to me that, yes, what I recorded was very raw on a fundamental, this movie made me feel something level, which I think is important, but I think I did need to let some time simmer and let it rattle around in my brain to give it a fair assessment. So I did. I slept on it, I gave it some more thought, and take two. I'm going to break from what I normally do, and I'm going to go ahead and throw the scores up there right away, because it's something that I honestly don't feel like going into every single category in a step-by-step fashion here. So I'm going to go ahead and throw them up on the screen. 5 categories, each worth up to 20 possible points for a total possible score of 100 points. And I will be getting into some of them here, but I kind of want to just freestyle it instead. First of all, I want to point out the good with this one. And before I get into it, as always, these reviews are spoiler-free. There will be a spoiler-filled deep dive discussion video accompanying this one, but this review is safe. So the first thing I want to really point out is something that really stood out to me, and that is the acting quality in this movie. Toni Collette, Alex Wolff, Millie Shapiro, and Gabriel Byrne all did an amazing job in this movie. I think Toni Collette stood out more than the rest, but high marks all around. There wasn't a lackluster performance to be found, and I try to stay away from exaggeration and hyperbole. So take this for what you will when I say that I would not be surprised if one of those 4 performances maybe doesn't win, but gets nominated for an Academy Award for Hereditary. I am curious to see if I'm going to be right on that, but I think they deserve it so far. So high marks on the acting, and obviously, as you can see there, I gave it 19 out of 20 points. But fundamentally, what I want to discuss with this movie is the plot, and generally what I had an issue with. This is a movie that is, like a lot of good horror movies, is fundamentally a mystery. You are trying to figure out what is going on. And in a good mystery, it's going to be focused on one of the 6 major questions: who, what, when, where, why, how. And this was very much a what movie. I'm going to be saying that a lot. It's a what movie. It's fundamentally focused on what. You as the audience member are trying to figure out what is happening, what is going on, what is real, what isn't, and any other character motivations like why or how is a little bit either doesn't play into it at all or comes very secondary to what. And here's the problem that I had with Hereditary in particular, is it gave me no foundation. There was no purchase upon which to set my foot. It was constantly throwing questions out there without answering any of them. And I think that that's a problem. I think that what we need as an audience, if we are engaged in a what movie, is some level of a foundational platform to stand on. Even midway through would be acceptable. If think of it in terms of you're a detective and you have a table full of evidence that makes no sense. It's piles of it are being thrown on there. when you go through an entire movie like that, where all it is more evidence, more weirdness, more evidence, more weirdness, doesn't link to one thing, doesn't link to another, well, that cancels that one out and that cancels that one out, but ultimately it's just another question and another question. It becomes exhausting. Now, what if in that table of evidence you find a coroner's report which gives you the solid time of death for the victim that you're tracking down the killer? And this is just a hypothetical. But now you have something solid. Now you have something that's going from the evidence table over to your corkboard, and now you have something solid. Now you look at other pieces of evidence, and, well, that person's alibi doesn't hold up, and that person's alibi does. And this person couldn't have done it because of this. And, well, this murder weapon doesn't fit that because, if that person's doing it, the pieces start to form. And even though all you have is something solid that's a piece, it's not the entirety of it. You're not giving the plot away. You're not telling the audience exactly what's going on in its entirety. You're giving them something foundationally solid to set upon. And like I said, even if that's midway through, it's something, and it's something that I think needs to happen. So as the audience is hypothesizing what's going on, say, in the context of the situation that I just presented, the audience is wrong. They say that, well, okay, maybe it happened midday. Well, now the coroner's report tells them that they're wrong. It happened in the middle of the night. That's fine. Now they get time to readjust and know that, okay, on that particular thing I'm wrong, so time to, step back, figure something else out. But if all you have is question after question, then ultimately anything's a possibility, which means it's exhausting. And you start to lose interest in caring what happened. And this movie didn't answer anything until the last, I'm not going to give what's happening, but I am going to say that if you're looking for answers, look for them in the last minute and a half of the movie, because that's about all you're going to get. And not only is that an unsatisfying level of attention paid to what, the what of what in the movie, but you also run into another issue as filmmakers, where anything that the audience is coming up with, whatever the reality is that's going on in your movie, it better be better than what the audience is coming up with. And that's a difficult thing to pull off. I'm going to say that right out. But at the same time, I think it's necessary in a movie like this. It kind of requires that as you're going through the screenplay and you're going through the writing process, you maybe hold off the ending and you give it to people and they read over it, and then you ask them, okay, well, what do you think is happening? And then you write that down, and whatever your reality is needs to be better than that. Otherwise, your ending is going to be extraordinarily disappointing. And you do need to head that off at the pass. And that is another critical element to giving foundationally solid clues, whereupon more hypotheses can be built, is because you start to take that level of audience suspicion and you start to narrow it. You give them a little bit less to run wild with, and that narrows the field of scope for what they might think, and that can still lead towards a complete 180, twist ending that really shocks them and is like, oh wow, I didn't see that coming. Because maybe that clue that you're giving there is a foundationally solid, truthful clue, but it actually had nothing to do with entirely what's going on, and it's a red herring, and now you just blew their minds because while they were focused on this, you were doing this. So it's an interesting game to play as far as, screenwriter and director against the audience. But you don't get that when all you're doing is throwing questions out there and throwing weirdness out there and putting one character against the other. Is this actually happening? Is it a psychotic break? And that's the ultimate problem that I had with this movie. Moving aside that, I thought that the acting performances really did set this way higher than it would be without, Toni Collette and the rest putting all in on their efforts. But more than that, I thought that the scares were really good, and that's why the fear quotient I gave it is 17 out of 20. There wasn't a jump scare to be had There were some startling moments, definitely some startling moments, but I don't think any real genuine jump scare. It doesn't have any moments where it's, leading up to it. Loud music. It doesn't have any of that. It's not cheap like that. And I mean, I say in movies that have jump scares that I think they have their time and place, and I do enjoy them as long as they're not overused or used, with a heavy hand or an incompetent hand. But I do enjoy a movie that doesn't even rely on them. And this had a lot of genuine scares in it that was disturbing imagery. And the reason it was disturbing was by that time you had identified with the characters. You had become emotionally invested in their journey and what they were going to be put through. And they were put through a lot. So, you may notice that I haven't actually given any plot details at all. I haven't said anything about what this movie's about, and I'm not going to. I don't think it really serves this type of movie well. It would be pointless. I could get into maybe the first 5 minutes of it, but ultimately it's not going to do any justice to what the movie is actually about and what it goes through. So I'm not even going to try. All I'm going to say is this movie is worth watching. It is scary. It is quality acting. It is good performances. And I even say that aside from the fact that I have fundamental issues with the level of mystery involved with this horror movie, it is a high recommendation for me. It is certainly not perfect. And it will potentially frustrate you. And the ending itself may leave you walking away from it unsatisfied. And that's how I was feeling last night. But when you start to process it more, when you start to come across, start to let it gel and congeal and think about the entirety of it, you start to forgive the ending a little bit more. And that's kind of where I'm sitting now. So that's why I wanted to redo this. The only other thing that I really want to mention very briefly, because I know this video is starting to run just a little bit long for my goal timeline, is the technical portion of this. I gave that a 19 out of 20, and there's a reason for that. There wasn't a single solitary moment in this, and there were some pretty strong technical effects in this movie, but there wasn't a single solitary scene, either normally shot or scary or whatever, that didn't completely sell me. And I thought it was brilliant how it was laid out. Everything about this worked, and I have to give some major tip of my hat to the technical prowess of the filmmakers in this one. Major high marks for that. So total score of 79 out of 100. I do recommend it. So that should about do it. I'm going to be discussing some more detailed points in the deep dive discussion, but until then, next time you want to watch a horror movie, first make sure that it's good and rotted.